Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I look forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode where Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down and chat with Brandon Farbstein. Today, we are going to do a small talks episode on the word mastermind. So we have talked in depth about masterminds, how they have helped us, and what we have learned, so we are going to share those things with you.
So you know this is coming. Before we get into masterminds, which have changed our life tremendously,
yes.
First you got to go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join, #hyperconsciousnation. Kevin and I are actually doing an episode, scratching the surface this week, of Q&A from, basically I went live earlier and asked everyone to comment their questions, so we're going to start doing some more of that to make sure that this content is helping you all with the things that you're going through on the day-to-day basis.
You want to give the definition?
Yes, so I'm doing something a little different with the definition today. Kevin does not know of this.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to define mastermind from Napoleon Hill's book.
What do we usually set this?
Think and Grow Rich.
This time for? Small talks?
15 minutes, I believe. Just so everyone knows, we are slightly overwhelmed.
Yes.
But that's okay.
We will tell you why after he reads this.
Perfect. All right, so if you have not read this book, it's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Great book.
And the concept of the mastermind is right here. So, power may be defined as, in quotes, Kevin just spilt on himself.
Looks like I peed myself.
Oh, my God. Okay, here we go. Power may be defined as organized and intelligently directed knowledge. Keep rolling. Kevin is laughing hysterically. Can I read the definition now, you think?
Keep rolling.
Power may be defined as organized and intelligently directed knowledge. Power, as the term is here used, refers to organized effort sufficient to enable an individual to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent. Organized effort is produced through the coordination of effort of two or more people who work toward a definite end in a spirit of harmony. The spirit of harmony is key there. Boomerang action. Boomerang. Okay, so I have some questions prepared for Kevin specifically. And
So before we get into this,
okay.
This is the first episode, this is the first solo episode that Alan and I have done since the Confident Women Consortium event. So we just want to let you guys know, for those who came out, we appreciate the hell out of you. It was a success for sure. I did not have any anxiety attacks, so that was a win for sure. I've learned so much about speaking in the last couple of weeks. Being up there was incredible, and I remember telling Alan and everybody that was there, basically, I think I enjoy speaking just as much as I enjoy podcasting, so I'm very much looking forward to continuing to grow and evolve and learn as a speaker. Speaking of that, Alan and I will be speaking alongside Eddie Pinero of Your World Within, Phil and Wade of Two Marines, One Mike, Terrence McMahon, and Chantel Adams.
Yep.
So that will be September 7th in Hollywood Beach, Florida, at Margaritaville. So it is a very nice resort right on the beach.
Right.
We're looking to sell 500 seats, and honestly, I am pumped.
It's going to be an amazing weekend.
It's basically it's an event where you're going to learn everything.
Right.
You're going to learn about wealth creation from T-Mac, mindset from me, fitness from Alan, more mindset from Eddie. Phil and Wade will be speaking about like what they learned in the Marines, and it's an awesome event. We're super pumped to bring it to you guys, and we cannot wait to meet you in person. My clients are already all going, so can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be epic. So imagine going on vacation, not just coming back with memories and pictures, but with the toolkit to design the life and body of your dreams.
Woo!
Okay.
And we're going to see Evan Carmichael on Wednesday
in Toronto. Yeah, we just rented a car.
So everything is happening. So if you're listening to this, we are on our way to see Evan in Toronto.
Okay, so for Kevin, we have been leveraging the power of masterminds for over a year now. I personally have been doing it for over 4 years, and it is something that I believe is so incredibly undervalued because it's hard to see the value in the moment. So especially in the short term, it seems like it's not paying off, but in the long term, it has a lot. So for the listeners, my question for Kevin is this. What is your best definition of what a mastermind is to you, and how has it changed your life?
So the best definition of a mastermind to me is a meeting of minds with the same focus. So
Fire.
I was thinking as you were saying that, like, if you're of college age or, you know, college wasn't that long ago for you, a mastermind for you might have been you and your girlfriends or dude friends talking about what bars you were going to go to.
Yeah.
And you guys might have been like, well, we're going to go here because, you know, the cover's low. Or if you're a guy, oh, they have a lot of, like, beautiful women here. You know, so that is what you're doing. Anytime you have minds thinking of the same thing, trying to get the best results in, like, a certain arena, that to me is like a mastermind.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so one of the best analogies that I ever heard for a mastermind is, and this is me sort of with my electrical computer engineering background.
Oh, boy.
So batteries in series combine power. So
Yeah.
imagine like 4 batteries all powering the same device, that device being your goals and dreams, like a mutual goal. So 4 batteries, the power of that is actually far more. It's more than 4x one battery. Right, so that's sort of the concept.
Yeah, I think it's unbelievably important because you won't always necessarily like we have a podcast mastermind.
Yeah.
With Summer, Kim, Spike.
Yep.
We won't always get off there and have something that 100% has to do with podcasting. But maybe it's a fundamental of learning or a book that we haven't read yet, or, you know, somebody's experience shakes something loose for you. Like, you'll definitely take something away. And like Alan said, it doesn't always present itself short term. Sometimes you have to hang in there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm guilty of that, being like, do we really have to do this? So masterminds will 100% change your life. They are one of the biggest things we do.
So I'm glad you just mentioned that. So early on, you struggled to hang in there.
Oh, yeah.
So for the listeners, when it comes to masterminds, there was a time early on where you didn't fully understand the long-term value of them. But now, looking back, it's easy to look back and connect the dots on how a lot of the dreams that are now coming true for us weren't possible or wouldn't be possible without the masterminds.
Yeah.
So the question that I have for you is this. What can you tell the listeners that might persuade or convince them of the long-term value so that they stick with it? And how do they know when it's time to call it quits on a specific mastermind to make room for a different one?
Ooh, that second one's a tough one.
Right.
I think the first one is you don't know what you don't know. And you'll never know what you don't know until you get in the room with somebody who does. And
Fire.
We have learned so much. But
Technically, the podcast is a mastermind.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, right?
When we have a guest that
That's
when
what
we
I
have
mean,
a guest
yeah.
in person.
Yeah.
Because in person, we were talking about this recently, like, it's just a different dynamic.
Yeah.
When I can see you and I know when you're done your sentence, I can add on to it. Go ahead.
Your definition of a mastermind was minds coming together with a common focus. Before every guest rep, we have a preamble where we say, what is your intention?
Yeah.
And then we try to help them with that intention. So I'm realizing in this moment that we're setting up for a mastermind every single time we have a guest on the show.
That's very true.
Yeah, because the intention is to add value to the listeners, but also to get a specific message across to the listeners from the guest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
I think people mastermind a lot more than they realize.
Yeah, they just don't call it that.
Right. Or it's not for their future necessarily. It's not for success. Maybe it's for work. How do we get this event or thing done in this required amount of time? You guys go into a room, you shut the door behind you, and you spitball.
Right.
That's masterminding.
So I'm going to reread the original question, but I also want to ask you another one. What's something that you used to mastermind about that you never considered a mastermind that maybe wasn't the best use of your time?
Fitness, the gym.
You don't think that was a good use of your time?
Oh no, not a. Oh, sorry, a good.
I
use?
mean, like the old Kevin, pre-podcast Kevin used to mastermind, but he never called it that. What were you masterminding about? Maybe it was like to go out to a specific bar.
No,
maybe
because I didn't do the bar thing really.
there was a time when you said that you were spending like.
Oh yeah, I spent like $5,000 in a summer.
Yeah.
But we went to the same place. Like there was no rhyme or reason behind that. I just wanted to go get drunk.
Jesus.
I don't know, man, because I don't think I was doing much planning before. I was very reactive. I mean, I used to mastermind at work.
Yeah, let's go into that.
But it was positive.
Yeah, because you were the logistics guy. You were the foreman who had to make sure everything got done in a certain amount of time.
Yeah, so I would field other people's opinions of what they thought would get the job done the best.
And then what?
And then act accordingly.
When I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives.
R.I.P.
Right. R.I.P. to the homie. The Hyperconscious Podcast meets Conversations Change Lives.
Brutal.
I think that my intention was ultimately to have people be a fly on the wall to listen in on masterminds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the so I answered the first part of that question. I didn't get the how do you know when it's time to move on from one to another?
Yep.
That's a difficult one. I think it's if you're not taking away any new distinctions. So we've talked about the 5 buckets before.
Yep.
If you find yourself in a mastermind where it's purely from either nostalgia or maintenance. If you're not having any takeaways, if you're not having any breakthroughs, and you feel like you're only mentoring somebody else, then I think it's probably time to try to get another one.
But there is some value to mentoring.
There is, but you can get paid to do that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Strong work.
Yeah. If you're ready to start coaching, then you can start coaching and start getting paid for that instead of.
Great distinction.
But again, you have to know that.
Yeah.
In that you have to be like we've been through that, where it's like,
definitely.
is it time to move on from this? Now we have 3. I mean,
so we have a mastermind every week with Mark Metry of the Humans 2.0 podcast.
Yep.
We have a mastermind with the entire Your World Within Live team for
Yep.
September 7th.
So that's 2.
We have a mastermind with Joyce every week
That's
to
3.
talk about the next event and the last one.
Podcast.
We have the podcast mastermind
4.
with Summer, Spike, Kim, myself, and you. Is that it?
Yeah.
At one point, we were masterminding with Matt and Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been a lot of masterminds that have come and went. I also personally have a mastermind with Nate Smithson. I would like to say every week, but at least once a month, depending on whether or not I can make it.
So, you got to see right there. That's 4 hours a week. Actually, that's 4.5 hours a week because we do an hour and a half every other
week.
with the podcast. I can understand how if you're listening, you might say like, well, is it really worth it? Like, how does that pay off? This event that we're having in Florida would not be a thing if we were not consistently masterminding with Eddie Pinero.
Yeah, we Eddie Pinero'd. We masterminded with Eddie Pinero for months before this was even a thoughts become things only for the. This is the interesting thing, and I want to make this clear to the listeners. What you're talking about consistently with your peers is going to start to manifest. And now, rather than just say manifest, what I mean by that is what you're talking about consistently with your peers, you're going to act on, and what you act on is going to bring results, which then you can talk about. And masterminds is basically like, picture brainstorming sessions for a specific goal, but regimented week to week.
Yeah.
Now, I have another question for Kevin.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Thoughts become things as long as you constantly think about them.
Yeah,
and
talk about them.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like every week we jump on the phone and we're talking about not the same exact things, but we're talking in the same. Every week it's in the same area. How to get better. Right. So you're going to have different distinctions.
How do we achieve our goals?
When we're with Mark, we're talking about speaking and podcasting and guests.
And networking.
So it's like we're thinking about that every week constantly. And then in order to prep for these masterminds, you have to think about your wins and losses. So we talked about reflection recently. It makes you reflect.
Yeah.
Before, after, and during the calls.
They're everything.
They are everything.
Wow. Okay, so remember Lori Harder's book, A Tribe Called Bliss?
Yes.
Episode 34. Kevin wanted to jump out the window prior to that call because he was freaking out. But Lori Harder, her book was really what got us to start doing an organized mastermind.
Yeah.
Because she has a book called A Tribe Called Bliss where she talks about how getting together with a group of empowered women to try to not gossip, but like actually talk about goals and dreams and lifestyle design is like going to change your life. And I remember the original calls that we had with Matt and Nate were based on her framework.
Yeah.
So we have kind of since evolved to our own framework. I think we should give the listeners an opportunity to understand how we organize. So a lot of times Kevin will try to keep the call on the rails. And so do you want to go into how we organize our masterminds?
Yeah. So I think this is something that you really, really locked in for me. So usually we'd jump on. There's a little bit of small talk before just to make sure we're all on the same page. You know, we know anything.
Hey, how are you? What's new?
Yeah. You know, hopefully you had a good week. So it's usually wins, losses, bottlenecks, and refocus.
Yep.
So what were your wins of the week? Because again, there's a fine line between, you know, knowing what you did well, knowing what you didn't do well, and really reflecting and expanding and trying to take the lesson out of that. So what did you do well this week? What didn't you do so well this week? So wins and losses, bottlenecks. What's stopping you from accomplishing your goals? Like what's really holding you back? Is it finances? Is it time? Is it confidence? Is it, you know, being
A mentality?
effective? Yeah, right. And then refocus. What is something that you need to refocus on? What do you want to make the next week about? What are your big goals? And then Alan has his famous question. I'll let you ask.
Yeah, so the question that I love to ask is this. If you were going to be the greatest version of yourself ever of all time and contribute to this world at your greatest level of contribution, and you could go back and relive the last week, what would you do differently? That's a great question because usually we all have a silent observer, like what we could have done better. And again, you'll get used to this. I think when we first started, we weren't as hardcore. But also I want to give the framework. So let's say a mastermind is an hour long. Let's say one of the listeners wants to start a mastermind. And they say, okay, who are 3 people who I think have tremendous value in their given competencies? Let's get them together and let's meet Wednesday at 2 p.m. For an hour. The first 15 minutes would be the first person's wins, losses, bottlenecks, refocus, and then ask that question. The other thing that we do as well is we set an intention at the end of the call.
Yeah.
So before we get off the call with our podcast mastermind with Spike Spencer, Kim Spencer, and Summer Scalero, all of them have been on the podcast, by the way. Wonderful, wonderful human beings, and unbelievably hardworking. We always say, okay, what's your intention for the week? Kevin couldn't be on the last call because family stuff, but we all have an intention. It's crazy because, dude, masterminds have become such a huge part of my life. And at one point, I remember the only mastermind I had was just Nate and I kind of like talking about life. Drastic. It's amazing.
It is. It's very important. It's more important than I think I gave credence to. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use it.
Credence? Credit.
I'm going to say credence.
Credence.
I'm going to go with it.
Word.
I'm going to own it. Real quick, though, also, you do not always have to stick to that 15-minute, 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 15-minute. What we find is the worst alarm ever of all time. If I didn't have super hearing, I wouldn't even heard it. Sorry, alarm. I'm not trying to talk trash. Sometimes you'll find out that somebody different every week is going through some shit.
Yeah.
And they need a little bit of extra time. And they need a little bit of extra support. Sometimes they just need, a shoulder to lean on, or they just need a vent. So I think that's important too. We don't always get our emotions met. We don't always get a chance to really talk about what's going on because, a lot of times people don't understand it. You might not understand why I'm struggling. I don't go to an office. I don't do a lot of things that a lot of people do that cause stress. So maybe you might not understand what I'm going through, but another entrepreneur might. Maybe if you're a teacher, I might not understand what you're going through because I don't know what it's like to work in front of 25 kids who are struggling to listen. So you would talk to other teachers about what did you find did you find a way to really capture the student's attention? How did you do that?
Right.
It's like, yeah, you just get cheat codes from other people who are doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's like bright spots and dark spots. What's working really well that I can double down on, and what's not working that I can eliminate, automate, or delegate. So before we overwhelm everybody here, I do want to talk a little bit
quickly
about what is the criteria for someone that should be in a mastermind. I think core values and similar goals.
Growth. They're in your growth bucket.
They're in your growth bucket. Okay, but have we articulated what that means for people?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, maybe
they
not.
could be mentors too.
Well, yeah. So they're on that side.
Okay.
They're on that side. You're going to take something positive away from it. I mean, I like to assume, and maybe that's naive, that you wouldn't really mastermind with people who you don't have the similar core values with, because if you don't believe something somebody is saying, you're probably not going to take it and use it.
But I also want to make it clear that people who are different than you aren't necessarily wrong for a mastermind.
Right.
Bringing different perspectives is huge. And also, how do you add value in a mastermind? You challenge each other, but you also support each other. When someone's really struggling, try to support them. When they're in the comfort zone and they really need to be pushed, you can challenge them. Like Kim will always say, Alan, I challenge you to
Right.
XYZ.
Yeah.
I also want to say that this episode is probably going to be really overwhelming if you've never masterminded before, but remember, big things start small. I started tracking critical numbers of number of masterminds I've done, and I wrote it down. I have 94 under my belt, and that's after I started tracking. Again, I was doing this with Nate for 3 years prior to that, and that's the only reason why I'm as competent in fitness as I am, is because I learned so much from him. I was teaching him entrepreneurship, finance, business, other things, and he was teaching me fitness. So that's all I have, I believe.
Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of masterminds, our next episode will be a Scratching the Surface episode where Alan and I will field questions from our Hyperconscious Nation private Facebook group. I think we have 5 questions that we are going to go into. And again, that is what that group is. It's a mastermind for people to talk about what they're dealing with for, again, get cheat codes, get the shortcuts from other people and hang out with some like-minded individuals.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Powerful.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast.
Going hyperconscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyperconscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyperconscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyperconscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.